Hi, I'm Mary Taylor, admissions tutor for housing at Stirling. I'd like to introduce you to some people we filmed recently talking about working in housing. All 5 started their career through the full-time housing course at the University of Stirling. First we have Gillian, Housing Strategy Manager in Edinburgh, and Catherine, who heads up the Homelessness Partnership in Glasgow. Then we have Alistair, Director of Glen Oaks Housing Association, and Kirsty, Development Manager for the Tenants Information Service. Last up is Duncan, currently studying at Stirling and on a work placement with a community-based housing association. We asked each of them how they got into housing.
Firstly, I started doing a degree in politics at Dundee University, and as I was coming to the end of that course, I decided I wanted to apply to do the diploma in housing at Stirling University, partly due to my own housing experiences while living in Dundee. So I spent 2 years studying at Stirling University, and a key part of the course I think was the placements, which introduced me to a variety of different types of housing organisations, and I think that was probably one of the most valuable experiences that I got from the course.
I got into housing in a very strange way. I went to college to become a home economics teacher, decided after 6 months I didn't have the patience for it, and was influenced by my social policy lecturer who said I would be a very good candidate for a career in housing. So I changed the emphasis of everything I did in my course to look at housing issues.
Yeah, in terms of my job, I'm the Chief Executive of Glen Oaks Housing Association in Glasgow. As an organisation, we've grown quite considerably. I've been with the organisation for 17 years. In that time, we've actually grown tenfold.
I started my career in housing after studying the diploma in housing at the University of Stirling. I only had 3 weeks off when I finished the course, and I got a temporary contract with Falkirk Council for 3 months.
My name is Duncan Woodall, studying at the University of Stirling. I'm doing my postgrad diploma in housing. The reason I chose to study to do housing happened almost by accident. I get an email from my lecturer when I was at Glasgow Uni studying geography, and it was about the course at Stirling. And then after that I looked up some academic websites and what potentially the course would offer, and what conditions we'd be working in, and what a housing officer would earn the conditions they'd work in, because that was what the course was geared to. So I looked at that. There's quite a few testimonials, and from all that I basically chose housing.
We also asked them what sort of work they had done or would like to do after leaving Stirling.
After my course, I went to work at Horizon Housing Association in West Lothian as a housing officer. That was my first housing job, and I worked there for a couple of years. And then I moved south to a small local authority just outside London called Spelthorne Borough Council, and I was a housing strategy officer there. I stayed there for a couple of years and then moved back up to Edinburgh, working in what was called private housing services in the council, developing the council's private housing strategy, and now I'm responsible for developing the council's city housing strategy, which is a sort of cross-tenure strategy.
My first job was as a modernisation officer. I worked in Raploch and Stirling, and from there I became one of the area managers. After about 5 years I left there to work for the Institute of Housing in Scotland as their Senior Staff Development Officer, which was a great experience for me. From that I went to be the Assistant Director of Housing in the Western Isles, and that I have to say was the best job in the world. After that I left there at Local Government Reorganisation and went to work for the Moray Council as their Chief Housing Officer. After that I was headhunted and went to work for a consultancy company called Hikas Chapman Hendy, and did a whole lot of work around homelessness, particularly in Scotland and in England, and saw a job advertised one day which said they were looking for a head of the homelessness partnership in Glasgow, and thought that was my job, so I applied for that, and that's where I am now.
I went to West Lothian Council as a housing officer. That was my first permanent job, and I was with West Lothian Council for almost 3 years, and then I joined the Tenants Information Service in June 1999, so that's my 10-year service this year, working with the Tenants Information Service. And we're a national volunteer organisation providing independent development and support to tenants and landlords all over Scotland.
After I finished university, I want to get involved in some housing associations within Glasgow, possibly specialising in policy and strategy area rather than like what some of my classmates would do, probably housing officer, housing assistant, hands-on roles, because I feel it'd be more beneficial with my personal expertise and in other areas like policy and strategy, and it interests me the most.
Hopefully you're thinking seriously about a career in housing. We asked our contacts what advice they had for people thinking about studying housing. Here's what they have to say to you.
If someone was coming to me asking for advice about, how to go into a career in housing, I would say it's a fantastic choice. It's a huge area. People often just focus on the social housing side of things, looking at sort of housing management and development in councils and RSLs. There's a lot more to it than that, and my work over the last 3 or 4 years has really demonstrated that. It's all about whole housing markets and looking at ensuring there's adequate housing supply to meet the needs of a growing economy, that kind of thing. It's a massive area. The advice I would give people is don't be too narrow in your definition of a career in housing. It's a massive area.
If you're thinking of a career in housing, there's a couple of things I would suggest that you do. One is learn to drive. Most jobs require driving skills, particularly those out of the city centres. Very useful skill, and it prevents promotion of some people because they don't have that. And the other is improve your communication skills, because the best thing that you can do is talk to people about what you do in your job.
If someone was to start a career in housing now, I would say that to go and do a qualification, a full-time qualification, in my opinion, would be the best option, because doing that full-time qualification gives you the practical experience of being on placement, as well as the theory and the chance to discuss policy issues while you're at university.
And let's leave the last word to Duncan, commenting on his first year at the housing conference.
I thought maybe people wouldn't want to speak to me that much because I'm just a mere student, but that's what I notice about housing in general. Everyone tries to help you more than they would necessarily say in the private sector, and that's been the most enjoyable part for me.
So if you're interested, please get in touch with us at the University of Stirling.